While most presidents wore suit jackets, ties, and dress pants all the time, you don't have to any longer. Because Presidents Unplugged has merch. If you want to check out some new shirts to buy as a nice gift for somebody in your family or just something that you want yourself, go to presidentsunpluggedmerch.com to check out new shirts, hoodies, crew necks, and anything else that you can dream of. Now in many more colors and new designs coming soon. I'm very excited for the President's Unplugged merch store to finally be open. Now, let's get back to the show. £300 of pure muscle. Said no one ever. This is Presidents Unplugged, and today we're talking about a big man with bigger problems. Today, we're going to dive into the life, adventure, and difficulties of William Howard Taft's life. William Howard Taft is a man who, in history, is overshadowed by a lot of people. He had a big man behind him in Teddy Roosevelt and a big controversial man in front of him in Woodrow Wilson. But often we forget just how interesting and how joyful William Howard Taft's life really was. So, let's dive in. Born on September 15th, my sister's birthday, 1857 in Cincinnati, Ohio. William Howard Taft, yes, everybody calls him by three names, was a pretty normal boy. Okay, I get it. You're getting tired of me saying all these kids were normal boys. Well, I actually have a news for you. William Howard Taft was nothing but a normal boy. As a kid, he was born into one of the most driven families in Cincinnati, Ohio. His mama and dad were both very successful. His dad was a lawyer. His mom drove all the kids to be the best they could be. William Howard Taft's older brothers, his father had two sons from another marriage, and his two brothers who were much older than him both became very successful lawyers and both went to Yale. Wow, that's a lot to live up to. But this is the good thing. William Howard Taft's mother was extremely supportive of him. She knew he would go far in whatever he did in life, and he took that advice to heart. So, William Howard Taft had a great time in school and ended up going to Yale. Hooray, you went to Yale. But here's the important thing. William Howard Taft was so driven. He was second in his class when he graduated. What a guy. He was not only smart, but as you'll see later in this episode, William Howard Taft was also smart when it came to his humor and to his charm. William Howard Taft loved self-deprecating humor, putting himself down for the humor and the laughter of others, which is a very good technique, by the way. William Taft was so downright honest and just charmful and funny, that got him a lot of where he was in politics. He used his calm and funny demeanor to get the things he wanted. But he still had one thing on his back. William Howard Taft, through most of his adult life, had extreme amounts of anxiety. In the grand scheme of things, William Howard Taft suffered with anxiety for most of his political career. He cared what people thought about him so much that it put him down in life. He would end up fighting through that anxiety and sealing a very strong political career. A political career? What's that? Well, he'll figure out very soon. About 10 years after he graduated from Yale, he started off his journey as a judge. That was actually the job that William Howard Taft wanted to be when he grew up. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. What a job. He didn't want to be the president. The president was too out there. Everyone sees the president, but he wasn't like that. He wasn't a look at me kind of figure. He was I want to do right, but I don't want a million people looking at me, which is a trait that the Supreme Court justice often has. He wasn't the chief of the Supreme Court quite yet. He was appointed to the Ohio Superior Court in 1887. He was also the youngest in his position at the time, which I know we hear that a lot today, but being the youngest in the position, people trusted this man. He had an honesty that was beyond anybody else's comprehension, and people trusted him in a lot that he did, and becoming the youngest person in the Ohio Superior Court shows really how the people of our country have trusted him, even from the beginning. After being part of the Ohio Superior Court for a while, he stepped up his game a little bit. He became a federal appeals judge, meaning that other than being just a normal judge in Ohio, he also would deal with some bigger cases that were a bigger deal. And these bigger cases he was being told to look at really showed his brilliance and stuff like this. He was very smart. He looked at all the facets of problems and wanted to fix them, hurting the least amount of people possible, which was another thing that really highlighted his personality. Honest and wanted to care for as many people as he possibly could. So, okay, he's doing great. He's doing great. Ring, ring, ring. He gets a call. Hello? Just kidding. They didn't have phones then. Well, they did, but not the normal people. William McKinley, the president of the United States at the time, said, "Hey, Taft, can we talk?" William Howard Taft was to the roof. The president wanting to talk to me? So he goes, excited, and talks to Mr. McKinley, who says this: "Okay, we just had the Spanish-American War, and we kind of have the Philippines as a territory now, and we need somebody to be a governor general of this Philippines area." Governor of the Philippines? Taft said. No, he didn't say that. He went home and said, "Helen," who was his wife, or as a lot of people called her, Nellie. He said, "Helen, I don't know what to think about this. He wants me to be the governor general of the Philippines. But Helen," I'm going to call her Helen because Helen sounds more superior, as she was. Helen said, "That's the opportunity of a lifetime, Willie. You need to go do that." Whether she called him Willie or not, what Willie matters is that Taft said yes. Taft became the Governor General of the Philippines, a new U.S. territory at the time, from 1904 to 1908. He was very good as this. He was very good in this position. He did a lot of reform in the Philippines even. He knew what he was doing, and he did very well at the job that he did. So, oh my gosh, he gets another call. Ring, ring. 4 years later, Teddy Roosevelt's like, "Okay, I'm running for re-election. McKinley has been assassinated, so I had a little time to finish up his term, and I'm getting re-elected into my own term. And I need a Secretary of War. Would you like to be my Secretary of War?" "Yes, yes, yes." Here lies a friendship. Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft were best buddies. We're going to look at a lot of facets of their relationship over this episode, but there's a lot that needs to be looked at. The first time that Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft really became best buddies was when Teddy Roosevelt said, "Oh, there's this guy named William Taft. He has a good record. He's going to be my Secretary of War." So Teddy Roosevelt and Taft started to get along. And Teddy Roosevelt was so kind to William Howard Taft, they kind of did everything together. A bromance, may I add. And William Howard Taft was so trustworthy that Roosevelt said, "Okay, you could be my successor." Now, William Howard Taft, as I said earlier, didn't want to be in this big presidential position. He kind of wanted to be back in the shadows. So being the president was not really in his arsenal of what he wanted to do. But William Howard Taft goes home and says, "Helen, I don't know what to do. Teddy Roosevelt wants me to be his successor, and I don't know what to think about it." And yet again, Helen says, "Are you serious, Willie? Come on, you have to do it." So, with his wife's optimism backing him up, William Howard Taft accepted Roosevelt's nomination as his successor for president. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. Ah, what a joy. Such a subtle, great displacement of power from Teddy Roosevelt to William Taft, Republican to Republican. It just works so well. And then he gets elected. So even though William Howard Taft didn't really campaign, his campaign was Teddy Roosevelt and his wife saying he's basically Teddy Roosevelt again in another body, in another really bigger body. So vote for him. He's basically me, Teddy Roosevelt. Not a real quote. So he gets elected. He's basically Teddy Roosevelt again, right? Yeah, not really. He gets elected, and this is a big problem. Teddy Roosevelt, if you've listened to the episode, Teddy Roosevelt's episode, you would know that Teddy Roosevelt did a lot when it came to big businesses and keeping the economy and fighting wrongdoing. All right, we as a country will fight the wrong and come out on top. Well, Taft was kind of for it, but then he had a couple of problems with Roosevelt's ideals. So, one of the big things is Teddy Roosevelt was a trust buster. He went up to these big business companies and made all these executive orders. Executive orders are happening a lot these days. How about that? All these executive orders and making all these big deals and all this stuff. But William Howard Taft, who had been a judge, said, hey, these executive orders, they're really not very good for the judicial system, and they're kind of overall wrong, and being kind of reserved, he just said they're not necessary. So all these acts to cut out all these big corporations and all this stuff that Roosevelt had set in place, Taft kind of said, I'm not going to do that. But we elected you as our second Teddy Roosevelt. And that was a problem. And it finally hit when a tariff issue came up. Oh, Republicans and tariffs, don't you just love it? Teddy Roosevelt had said lots of things about the tariff issue during his term, and he really made good deal with them. He had some good tariff decisions that really kept the economy in check. And then Taft came in, having not a clue how to really deal with a tariff, and he jacked it up. He put some clauses on it that made it not really an effective tariff. And just like that, our economy wasn't doing very well. Everyone was getting taxed, and people were not getting on the raft with Taft. People were not happy. And it all came to problems when Teddy Roosevelt came back from his exhibition in Africa. I wish I was joking, I'm telling the truth. And he said, Taft, what have you done? I left you with a perfect economy, all this great hope, and you ruined it. So comes tension. Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft had tension. The man that Teddy Roosevelt said is my successor, who will continue my ideals for the better, had failed. Teddy Roosevelt was not happy. And in his very Teddy Roosevelt voice, he definitely said it just like this: I'm going to take back this nation and all it has to offer. So, he was not going to let it happen. So, in 1912, re-election. Oh, yay. William Howard Taft, the incumbent, he's done so great the last 4 years. Yeah, said no one ever. So Teddy Roosevelt coming in hot as a Republican candidate. He was coming back to take back that nation that he changed for the better. So he does it. Him and Taft are in the primaries fighting off for that Republican nomination, and somehow, because Taft knew the people in government at the time, because I don't know, he was just the president, he got his way to that Republican nomination. But Roosevelt was not giving up just yet. Roosevelt, he did something different. While Taft had kind of leaned towards conservatism, Roosevelt always had more of a progressive ideal on things. So Teddy Roosevelt claimed the Progressive Party and named it the Bull Moose Party. Wait, we've heard this story before. Any loyal people know that the election of 1912 was a talk in the Teddy Roosevelt episode, Born to Fight, Built to Lead, like a month ago. So what happened? Teddy Roosevelt, as I said in that episode, won 27.4% of the vote, while William Howard Taft won only about 23. Yikes. Teddy Roosevelt came back to win this victory with he wanted to be his own progressive party winning the presidential nomination, but sadly it doesn't work that way. Instead, him and Taft kind of split the Republican Party, and Woodrow Wilson would end up winning in the end. So, William Taft can't do what he really wanted to do because Roosevelt got in the way, and he can't have re-election. So sad. So, that's the story of William Howard Taft's presidency. Now, I need to get to what people know William Howard Taft for. I need to get to the elephant in the room. Or is that just William Howard Taft? The man was giant. 300 pounds of pure muscle, as I said in the beginning. William Howard Taft was a big guy. His anxiety, as I mentioned earlier, got the best of him, and he was a very, very large man when it came to eating and not going to Planet Fitness every week to fulfill his gym membership. But even though he was 300 pounds, ate a whole dozen eggs and a pound of bacon every morning, oh my gosh, what a guy, William Howard Taft didn't care. He didn't give a lick of anything to the people who said, man, you're fat. Oh my God, fattest president ever. He didn't care. He made jokes. There were lots of great jokes like, William Howard Taft went horse riding last week. Is the horse okay? William Howard Taft is the kindest man ever. He gave up his seat to 4 women last week. Golly, that's harsher than politics today. No, not really. But William Howard Taft embraced it and laughed about it. And as I said earlier, his self-deprecating humor came out in the end and made him even more charming as a person. That's not the end of William Howard Taft's story. William Howard Taft, in 1921, after Woodrow Wilson won the nomination and took us into World War I and was extremely racist, yeah, I can't wait for the Woodrow Wilson episode. After Woodrow Wilson's atrocity of a term, Warren Harding was elected as a return to normalcy. He told the people, I don't like war. We need to be a normal country again. So he won. And being the Republican man he was, Warren Harding said, Taft, would you like to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? And Taft said, ho, 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 ho. Yes. I can see him acting like Santa Claus in response to a question like that, but whatever. William Howard Taft, in the final years of his life, was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The main thing that he did as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, no major cases, but he did begin building the Supreme Court building, which is still used today. That was the biggest accomplishment in his Supreme Court days, that he made this big building that the Supreme Court meets in, and it's a representation of the 3 branches of government, being the legislative, executive, and judicial. Judicial hadn't gotten a lot of credit, so they gave them this big old building that they can do their meetings in. So, William Howard Taft had a fun 9 years in the Supreme Court, and if you don't know, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court can kind of just end their term whenever they kind of want. So he leaves the Supreme Court in February of 1930. But he wouldn't last long. After becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and serving for a couple of years, William Howard Taft started again his gym membership to Planet Fitness to lose some weight. In the final years of his life, the last 3 years of William Howard Taft's life, he actually lost 100 pounds. And as a guy who has lost 50 plus pounds at one point, I respect him. And William Howard Taft was looking real good these last years of his life. Slim, fit, no tummy. Yeah, there might still be a little, but it's okay. So, what have we learned? William Howard Taft, the man who was not stuck in a bathtub. You can see where those rumors come up when the man is 300 pounds, but sadly, no, he did not get stuck in a bathtub. He did I'm going to say this is a bonus fact of the episode because we are getting a little long. William Howard Taft, while not being stuck in a bathtub during his presidency, he did make the White House bathtub bigger. And that bathtub is basically still the same size today. So while Donald Trump or whoever our president is lounging in this massive 10,000 square foot bathtub, they can thank William Howard Taft. So, William Howard Taft's legacy is claimed as one that was honest, funny, self-deprecating, but downright charming. The man had a heart. The man showed his heart. And he had fun in everything he did. And the fact that the final days of his life in the Supreme Court, where he wanted to be his whole life, is just a perfect end to a story. And just to make sure people who read books, who like a good story, a good ending to a story, yes, William Howard Taft and Teddy Roosevelt did make it up to each other later in their life while he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. They met in a coffee shop and ended their ways happy with each other, congratulating each other on both of their success. So that story ends happily ever after. Oh, wait. We have an outro to be getting to. Tune in next Friday as we talk about William Henry Harrison, our 9th president that only had 30 days in the presidential office. How was that possible? Figure out that and much more next week. This is Presidents Unplugged. I'm Ty Svensson, and I will see you next Friday. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow Presidents Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.